AI governance is failing in every specific way, not because teams don't have policies, but because they don't have model proof and they don't have risk owners. In 2026, leadership is being asked one hard question: can we prove your AI is behaving as intended? And who signs the residual risk? Without those two answers, governance becomes a theater. Dashboard looks good, audits pass on paper, but real world drifts, biases, shadow models, vendor models, and insecure pipelines keep multiplying. Today, the pain points are model shift faster than the controls can verify, accountability is unclear across product data security and compliance. Evidence is scattered across tools, emails, and spreadsheets. Risk decisions happen informally without traceability. The conversation is designed to create practical reset governance that can be proven, owned, and defended continuously. We are welcoming Mr. Prasad to join our podcast on the Control and Trust podcast series. And let's begin the topic with the discussion with Prasad, bringing him on to the screen. Hi, Prasad. Welcome to our podcast. Good
Good
evening.
evening.
How are you, sir?
Good evening, Premji. I'm good. How are you doing this?
Good, sir. Sir, a small intro about yourself for the audience sake, sir.
Yeah. Sir, this is Prasad Amula, founder director for the Risker Enterprise Solutions based out of Hyderabad. So I'm total 17 plus years of experience across information security, audits, and IS audits, and the fintech. I worked in the project head as an angel one, and then I moved to cybersecurity GRC space. Now I'm pursuing a artificial intelligence management system to the organizations. This is my brief intro.
Thank you, Prasad. Thank you for that intro. Let's dive into the topic and discuss on how control and trust is what we want to build under the GRC model that we want to look at. What does model proof actually mean in business terms, not data science terms?
Sir, actually, we know how the model works in the AI because that is the base of any AI tool or any agentic tool going to work in the organizations. This is there's evidence as it. We need to have a structured body of documentation. Then need a broad regulator audit committee with a clear intent, operates with a defined scope, data responsibly. That need to be claimed and monitored continuously afterwards. And even the access need to be controlled. Otherwise, that's risk formally accepted by the named owner. So we need to be a total life cycle abide with that a model. That where the model proof will comes into the picture. Sorry, your voice is break.
Sorry. You are saying is the model proof is very important, right, Prasad? And
Yes.
that now, if the board asks to prove this model is safe and useful, what evidence should be ready in an hour? Maybe that's the board decision, right? So they want to give certain demand saying that can we produce that, and what is that we produce? That is what we can or prove is what we want to understand, Prasad.
Actually, the model proof will act as a certificate, sir. It will give the authentication for that. And if a board asks anything regarding that model proof, there is 6 steps involved in that. First, we need to have a model chapter, who is approved, and what is the intention of use, and what the business outcome it supports. And then it has a data lineage record also, because the where the training input to exit, the training and the inference data come from, that as a retention also need into the lineage records. And then comes to the evaluation report, where the performance metrics, fairness, benchmark, and pass or fail threshold. Any threshold limit, any matrix, we need to have some parameters KPI attached to it. And then it comes to the monitoring dashboard, where the complete indicators, threshold, and current status where it is stands. And then we have an access log as a model access, approve history, who did that, who did what, and where it is glowing, where it is the flowing, And the residual risk, rightly you mentioned, the residual risk should be acknowledged. You should not leave it as such, because that is the inherent risk what we mentioned. And the finally, we should have an incident register any past incident, because we need to understand the similar use case. Because GRC or cybersecurity expert, we need to be very strong in playbooks and incident register for the responses, what are the resolutions. Even if it is none of the report, even we need to mention that.
Yeah, okay, got it, sir. Now, what are the top proof artifacts you expect across performance, fairness, security, and governance?
We can take it as a sir. We have accuracy and precision recall, and the tasks is made to be the defined threshold that should have defined to the performance evaluation report. These parameters need to be aligned. And then it comes to fairness, the evaluation across protected groups. Now we know the how the AI earlier it is. Now it is very matured, very very structured approach now in the models coming up. But before that, there is a lot of bias. But still, there are some praxisness working around that. We need to be check that fairness and bias assessment. And then next stage is to we need to have a secure controls map. Because in the secure, but in the controls, if you're setting for any organizations, if it is the intentions, even if the organizations, the validation, what is giving to input validation, what is the filtering he has, and what the control it has, and the data inscription. Even in this control mechanism, we have prompt injection defenses and logging configuration. Without that, and even we know a lot of data is flowing inside, and the storage and the transit and to the exit, that we need to have a secure controls map around that. And then we have perfectly data governance record. What is the consent? Now we are coming with a DPDP Act in the now in the India. So that base the content basis, what is the origin, we need to have a problem statement to the exit output, that governance should be there. And we has the signed risk acceptance document, the named risk owner, who is a risk owner, because he is a whole and sole responsible for the what the complete structure we have, what the use, what the risk, and the monitoring commitment. Because without commitment, just for the sake of controls a check box is no use. That's what our vision is.
Are right. See, we need to look at how define that model proof that is there. Grade that decision grade evidence is what we'll have to look at. Intent, scope, data lineage, evaluation results, monitoring, access controls, and these are all pointers that we have to look at when we're talking about GRC. We need to look at end to end on how the governance is there. What is the risks that we are looking at? How are those risks mitigated? As you rightly said, who's the stakeholder, who's the owner, how is he taking it, what are the approved risks, how is it getting accepted is what we are saying. And keep keep it very simple, and proof must be repeatable, auditable, and tied
Audit.
to the business outcomes, right?
Yes.
Because end of the day, if you are not able to show proof, it is not aligning to the business outcome is what we are understanding.
And we are unable to control it as well.
Yes. So you can't, if you can't prove it, you cannot control it.
Yes.
That's what you are saying also, right? So where do you think are they break first? It is at the intake level, training level, development level, or monitoring or incident response level. Where do you think the first break happens?
Uh, Sir, here there is no standardized procedure here based on the pattern of the enterprise AI programs, where it is use case, particularly to the industry specific, whether it is a intake, no standardized intake form or begin with any classification or risk assessment. And for the training phase, we have data preservance not captured. Only preference is there due to timeline pressure. We have just pause it. And the deployment, no approval gate, and monitoring at launch, but alert threshold should be maintained and drift ignored. And the incident response, no AI specific playbook, but because the teams of separate IT general control has provided to organizations now in the enterprises. So that where we have a complete layer based on the use cases, we can work out on that.
So you are saying it can be at any level. It does not follow a sequence of pattern, or this is a flow that it follows. It can break anywhere,
Anyway,
because somewhere some data is not given at the intake level, then there is a challenge.
yes.
Training, while training we have missed something to give it as a training module, then there's a challenge. Deploying and monitoring also, if you leave one of the piece of which is not getting deployed, then there is a problem.
Well,
And if incident side, if there is an incident and it does not capture also, then there is a problem. So we cannot define what or where it will break is what you are saying, but it can break at each level also is what you
each
are
level
saying.
also. Yes. We
Right.
need to be
So
very
what?
careful at each stage. Yes.
Yeah, yes, sir. So what are the three governance illusions leaders should stop believing, right? So immediately there are, they create so many things that it will happen like this, it may happen like this. So we are all scenario based, right? So we think if this happens, this should be done, if this happens, this should be done. So where do you think are these three governance illusions leaders should stop believing?
Generally, sir, what even this we can say is a market trap, or even the companies coming up lot of like mushrooms in the market. They're making that real control and real governance comes with the tools. That is a big myth. We don't know. We have the standard protocol for each and every tool. Some additional, some latency will be there with the means with the products, but the outcome is same. But if what is I as a CISO or CIO, what I need to do, I need to see what is really needed for us, for our organizations, at what level I am using AI in my organization for my use. That is, here the tool is not meant for governance. Even just making it for a platform to take up compliance point of view, it doesn't make sense. Maybe we need to do a workflow integrations around that. And second one is approval to accountability, because we know the 5 6 stages in the approval stage and the risk register. What is a rubber stamp? We know the what is meant by rubber stamping. Many cases just simply pass it, okay, sign in and get it done. But it is not, submission should not be there. There should be some accountability for the who is the real owner, who is a real person, what is justify for the decision, whether if he is signing, what is the justification for that. We need to have. And the third is annual review is control. You have a cycle for quarterly, monthly, bi-weekly, and yearly, quarterly, everything. But what is distribution shift around the annual reviews at our organizations? Attack, what the attack services happening? How frequently we are doing the review and the controlling for the calendar event, or in the by so 6 months or 3 months, because it should be as a real continuous really and trigger based evaluation, because we know the SOC is working around the 24/7 in the organizations. Every organization should shift from that continuous monitoring, because once they are facing a problem, they are coming back and get a re-engineering, and there the real business continuity also falls in place. So that we need to be very careful in that aspect. These three myths we need to be very careful for any organizations.
What we are saying is policies fail when workflows don't enforce them. Okay, call out for the illusions that patterns tool use equals governance, approval is accountability, right? And annual review equals controls. Governance must live inside the delivery pipelines, because we don't need to look at saying that every piece that we deliver, we need to look at a lens and then do. So it should follow the pipeline, and then it should be going by its own, and that is a system that we have to build is what you are saying. And AI governance fails when seam between policy and production. So you have a
Productions
policy, but it is not implemented in production, and there is a production issue that is there not there in the policy. So I think
policies.
that's one thing that happens at few are the pointers that we see. What or who should own AI risk, and what does the real ownership look like? Because everywhere AI is there now. So
Yeah.
your take on it.
Actually, there are I seeing many organizations that there won't be much, there won't be any structure for this AI risk chapter, because I am seeing in the big organizations and mid-sized organization, they don't have any protocol for this risk ownership for the AI's case, because that should be they're relying on the third parties or inside that, because that should be a very role based, and what is the model support, the business outcome should be within the organization, what a role mentioned, because third party he has a separate vision for these outcomes, but within organizations he knows how the real working comes. So it should be explicit. It not should be delegated to technical team by default, because technical team they have their own set of protocols. His roles and responsibilities are different, but when it comes to the risk ownership, it should be very explicit, it should be very developed. But if say the business of the use case, you receive the benefit and bear the consequence of the model pays, that accountability authorization should be there. You should feel so okay, what anything is happened, I'll take the responsibility. Is a true leader will come into the picture, take it as a risk ownership in any organizations.
Yeah, I get you. Without accountability, there is no implementation. Means I can push it to anybody, right? So I didn't do it, so it is the other person did. I don't own it because that is not. So once a tool is being deployed, the person who runs the tool becomes the default owner. That's what we say. Now, coming to that point only, is the risk owner the product owner, the business owner, the CISO, or the shared model? Why?
Uh, Sir, actually, many organizations following this shared ownership model, but in my sense, what I feel it is a dangerous practice, because I'm going to tell you why. Because
Yeah.
that if you say the product owner, he has a governance requirement, he has a product requirement, he has a
Hmm.
complete evidence collection milestones. But when it comes to business owner, his purpose is different, his objective is different, what is the acceptable risk threshold is different, and a monitoring plan. He has a separate intention in the mind. So then, if it comes to CISO, he has a separate security controls, because all controls 175, 120, 130, anything in the number counts. He has an input filtering, access management, like we already depend on the GRC platforms. It is mentioned. So what is the use case? Is just build filter right. That is not the model responder works. And there is another layer. Then comes to the data governance, because in the AI, in the working of AI products, there is a data governance, is a use scope and a use importance here, because he has a data lineage. He know what is a data retention policy and a risk portal in the evidence pattern. So because he will collect everything, total pipeline, and he will share to the business owner. And then if we go to the technical level, MLNs or anybody in the team, he implements only monitoring and alert. Is not directed by the risk owner. Is he can't take the decision depends on the organizations, because he just as a technical expert, he will just monitor and alert and just pass it to the information. That's all.
So I think what you're saying, shared model of ownership is very risky, and you cannot have shared ownership, and that ownership should see. I think what we are saying in as many words is that if I have owner and I delegate, that's a different kind of ownership that I have. That is a responsibility saying that this person will do this task and this he is his responsibility. If that
Racing
task
matters.
is not,
Simple
yeah,
racing matters. Yeah.
yeah. So if I have a challenge in the task, I go to that person because I have given that ownership to that person. Now it's a straight ownership. There is no shared ownership here.
Yeah.
But
The clear
as a
intention, clear things.
yeah. So as a product owner or the tool owner, I am supposed to make the tool work according to what the business objectives are there. So I think that's what we are saying. Now, what must a risk owner be able to sign off, and what must they be refuse to sign off? Because as you say, I sign off this, and I am putting boundaries, right? So what are those that can be signed off, and what are those which he says cannot be signed off? Any pointers there?
Yeah, actually. it has some boundaries, like you mentioned. Is there is complete, it can be approved what is intended use. He has a clear explicit scope and use cases, and he has a performance threshold with evidence attached, and a residual risk after controls is applied, monitoring and reevaluation plan, because they should not be blame anyone after that. If it comes to stage, you should not blame anyone back end. And then will see authority suspend model without committee approval. He has a right. Then he can write off anything if it is not going to work for his purpose. Then that these can be sign off and going further, and he can refuse undefined or any vague, any subject of creep, soap creep. It is not going to help in the organizations as a business unit. Then you can raise it. You can strictly call off that part. And no planetary planning, because I seen one of the organization in Hyderabad. They don't have just simply why they are using AI tools, I don't know, because they are not intended for AI purpose. Because in that case there is no purpose to into the to exclusively put into that. For the sake of society, for the sake of compliance, for the sake of society, they are using just as a word, but it's not the case. That scenarios we need to simply wear it out. And if there is any legal compliances working out, you need to be compliant with, you need to consult with the legal owners. He'll take decisions and pass on the decisions if it intended for the social cause.
The point that we want to look at is risk owner should be, as you rightly said, it should be very explicit role based, right? So that is what ownership means. Is it's not that ownership is intent to use, right? Intended approving or threshold residual risk monitoring plan, and the kill switch authority refuse to sign when this evidence is missing. So I think governance starts with the day risk has the name and a signature. That's what we say. That's
both
a,
both as
right.
authority and at a
Yeah,
blame, take it a
yeah,
blame.
yeah. So what is the minimum AI governance operating system that every organization needs? Any pointers around it?
Yes, sir. I can say we can say that here the operating system in the organization context, because it is an interconnected process, roles and artifacts. So anybody around that, he has a corporate governance army. The minimum viable stack has 7 components that each performing distinct function and feeding into the others. Because the governance operates is a smallest set of interconnected process roles and artifacts. Now we previous in the first dialogue we mentioned with the risk owner everything, that operating system, that 7 roles need to be aligned for a common cause. That what every organization needs.
Got it. So what we are saying is we need to have a governance model which every organization fits in, right? Or maybe pointer that can. Now, if we had to build the smallest value governance stack, what are the core competencies required for us to build that? So
There are we can say 6 or 7 components we can work on minimum viable governance stack. There is a model inventory, because every model it has a owner, classification and status and review date. That model inventory, because classification is different with the risk classification framework, high, medium, low to use case impact and data sensitivity, and intake and approval workflow. Mandatory intake from before model deployment begins gets at key life cycle stages. This complete governance stack need to be taken care. And then after intakes, then will comes to the evidence templates. That should be very standardized. You should very the one charter is there to take care, and the evaluation required, and fairness assessment and risk assessment acceptance form. Because that we know many companies working on in ISO's other frameworks, we have separate risk register for the each and every industries. Similarly, the same acceptance it need not to be same with the AI products. So they need to be clarified with which the mapping is need to be alignment. And then comes to the monitoring, performance deterioration, and uses anomaly plugs. That monitoring need to be there. Afterwards, there is incident playbook, procedure and detect content. And then after content, it is assess and notify and remediate. As a playbook, it should have only detect, it should have a mechanism to remediate also. That complete thread should be complete. Otherwise, it should not be called as a minimum viable governance stack. And after that, we can say it is third party control because it is within. After that, we have a many lot of vendors coming up for the each and every small services. We need to have various control classes and control register for the each and every vendor, third party vendors we can embed in these systems. So these are the complete, we can say, tech track for the governance. So
What should be centralized versus embedded inside the product team? So, any pointers that can be looked at on this?
yes, sir. Actually, we can say centralize our governance office, one like project management office, and embed in the product or ML streams. That will be two differentiation. We can say if it is centralized office like centralized making, that ownership should lies with them. He prepare
Okay.
everything, and he will pass on to the complete organizations level. He won't
Hmm.
teach to the each and every department or each and every cross-functional departments within organizations. He has a structure for the whole organizations. He has a complete evidence template design and versioning. Every layer he has, and a risk clarification and audit trail compliance. That where the audit trail need to be very specific, they're very elaborated to get into that for the reviews and the cross-model trend analysis and benchmarking. This we make it as a centralized. And when come to the embedded product teams, there will be intake from the completion and submission. Simple, because some owner is there, he's just passing on. So he has a completion, and that life cycle need to be there, and evidence collection, evidence package assembly, because ML teams is there, ML product team is there. They need to be their vision and their limitations, they need to be packet assembled, and a monitoring configuration and alert management are there. Here also, apart from the audit trials, here the for the team we can say incident detection and first respond escalation. There is, because they first affected, and they will also trigger immediately what's happening around, what is the bad, what is the negative sense around happening in the model. And then after that, these people also working in the third party vendor assessment initiation also, because centralized team as won't have any right to onboard, they are only final authority. But these team product teams, they have that uh, that sense of urgency, sense of accountability to make it forward.
What we are saying is product team has certain requirements which only they understand. That's the point that I think what we are saying. And when we centralized, it goes to the organization, where organization policies, irrespective of the departments, the
Industries also.
industries, whatever are there as the subdomains in that industry, it does not matter. One policy is applicable to the whole organization. But if you are looking at product side, we have teams doing specific work. For that specific work, what are the tools, what are the controls, what are the minimum inventory, what is the minimum OS that they need to look, risk clarification, approval, workflow, evidence step, all those things like monitoring, incident play, third party controls, centralized standards and audit trail, embedded execution in product and ML ops is what we should look at. So product will look at the ML ops, the product life cycle, their backlogs, their stories, and all these things. Whereas the the central governance or centralized piece will look at what is the inventory for each of the team, what is the risks that they are carrying, what is that approval workflow each department has under their control. So these are workflows that they build is what I mean. Governance isn't a committee, it's an operating system is what we are saying. And now what we've seen is the shadow models have been one of the big things that are happening off late, right? So How do you prevent shadow models and unmanaged AI from spreading? Because you have a tool, it is coming free, download, install. So those challenges are there even today. That those are all unmanaged. This one,
Correct, sir.
how do you prevent such shadow models and unmanaged AIs to be spreading
Sir,
inside the organization?
correct, sir. Actually, we are hearing the news like their AI agents themselves, they are taking a decisions and resigned everyone, and even the CEO has resigned himself. So that way the proxy and shadow AI is working within the organization. If you won't control itself when onboarding, so there is a models to say assisted feature you without organization knowledge clarification. They don't like, they're just generic tools they are working. If they train more on that generic tools, they will work behave like anything. They won't see for that what the pathway it is, though they're very unclear and inaccessible for this shadow eye. We have lot of APIs we are backing up. We can see and data export from total databases in the SaaS tools. We are working on the SaaS tools. N number of tools we are working on anything, and also our team is, saving the repositories in the GitHubs, continue very training model, fine tuning steps, LM. It is open public, so don't know where how they open source they were using for their purpose. That what we can intended to.
Most of the ML models are open source only. So
Yes, sir.
if you look at
Even many are later our Copilot and Gemini, ChatGPT. We are already embedded with our regular, URLs search engines.
yeah,
So that way they're doing that back end works.
right. So the next question that I do, what signals reveal shadow AI early? You spoke about APIs, right? Early API usage,
Yeah.
data pools, vendor
Yes.
tools, co-pilots is what you spoke also,
Yes.
and some of the SaaS features. What are those signals that reveal AI early? So, what your take on it?
Actually, what are the capabilities? What the SaaS models? They are just meant for the workflow. What their purpose. Suppose if it's say it is a HR department, it is mentioned to only onboarding to the exit formats. It has the total workflow embed. If it is other, there is some other SaaS tools without IT knowledge. What they'll do, they unstructured everything. They don't no linear path with them. It will do their job, random jobs without doing anything. That what it is mentioned. There is no approved gateway for them also.
I got it, sir. Now, what enforcement works without killing innovation? Because if you really look at when we put some policies, some of the blockage happens at the perimeter level or the firewall level or at the network level. So, what kind of enforcement can be done without killing that blockers or killing that innovation is what we want to understand.
Uh, Primarily, sir, we should have a fixed use case templates each and every stage. That where even every team member is aligned with that, he will fill the forms, whatever it mentioned in that fixed template, and that too in the pre-approved. It's not it's a publish in the pre-approved use case template. Then do pre-clear teams adapt because they save time. Otherwise, if there is no pattern, it will gone. The organization is gone. And later it comes to the sanctions tool catalog because there is we do due diligence for the tools for the organizations before onboarding. I think that is very influencing things we are working on. For that, we need to have a short and actionable list of approved AI tools in the procurement stage because we know we have to work on the lines. For them, we need to have a deep research which tool meant for our need and the list of approved AI tools. We need to that sanction list should be very catalog that will be circulated to each and every employee. And then we'll come to the light touch intake form. We can say what is, who owns, and what does it touch. It's simple because it should have a very lightweight, no complex things because easy to understand, easy to adapt, easy to use. Simple. And then comes to AI aware access control, because we have data loss protection list and the network loss, and the API calls, how the endpoint is working, how the review is going, and what are the blocking is happening at the AI in the setting up the organizations. And then we have periodic campaigns for the shadow AIs, because like even we can say in the normal generic cybersecurity term, we can say as a phishing. This is a big difficulty for the organization to tackle. Similar way, in the it comes to the AI, this is a shadow is replacing that part, because we need to have a very classified use and govern forward for the window, specific window for the shadow AIs. We need to have that awareness for each and every employees.
Got it, sir. Now, what we are saying is treat shadow AI like a shadow IT, right? That's the pointer that we want to say. Classify is what you're saying. How do we govern them? Use guardrails, approved patterns, sanction tools, because that's what is very important. Because if you look at earlier, we had whitelisting, right, where we had
Yeah.
certain whitelisting of applications, then we had whitelisting of some of the softwares, then we had tool based licenses also given or assigned to few people only based on request and approvals. I think what we are combinedly saying for all this is that there should be an inventory. That inventory should be guarded, protected, and see how it can be done. That's the first step.
Yeah.
Second is how do we look at the access, approval, sanctioning of the tools, access controls, how they take the inflows or take the flows that are faster than bypassing. Because if it bypasses, then we are at risk,
Yes.
right? So that's the challenge that we see.
The basics.
Yeah, if we say governance is slow, shadow AI becomes faster ruler,
Faster
right?
than
So,
it, because there is no
right, so
guidance, it
that's
will
that's
be
that's
faster.
one thing that we want to look at. And now, what are the most common model proof gaps during audits or executive reviews? So you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, please, sir, please.
Sorry. What are the most common model proof gaps during audit and executive reviews?
uh, so in my sense, we can say audit failure, not malicious intent and technical competence, what we can say, they're caused by evidence gaps that are equated quietly between deployment development to the deployment, because we don't know, we are just ignoring in the process. But in a, that audit need to be, because very is not so matured in the Indian conditions or in the organizations nowadays. You should have a complete overview idea for the what is development to the deployment in the AI life cycle, AI tech stack life cycle, and the layer side. And then it comes to build models with the good intentions under document relations, data and controls that define the trustworthiness. Here it comes to the trustworthiness for the audits in the AIs.
Got it. Now, what evidence items are most often missing? Because with the AI in place, there are a lot of evidences that are required. One is you can also say is data consent can be one of the
Yes.
evidence. Evolution, what evaluation that you are doing, those results, right?
Yes, sir.
Monitoring and access logs, those are things. Change history.
That missing evidence.
Yeah.
Basically,
So,
it is a change.
what evidence items are most often missing with these? If I have to say these, are there any more, or if you say these, how do we look at not have them missing?
Sir, like you rightly pointed out data lineage and baseline monitoring and the change logs. There are also the risk acceptance for the risk forms.
Okay.
There is no named owner, no owner means no accountability. It's a
Yeah.
big red flag. And the fairness in subgroup evaluation, that should be aggregated performance metric without subgroup breakdown. Now
Hmm.
we are seeing centralized governance that should be in embed in the team's lower level also.
Okay.
Top top to bottom approach.
Top to down water,
Yeah,
top down approach. Yeah.
top down approach. And then comes to the incident register. If the no incident is also, the plank incident should be suspicious, because if the no incident rejected, there should be some red flag, or
Hmm.
think at twice, go back,
Hmm.
check for the evidence, and come back, cross check. Cross check, we can say double check, we can say.
Okay. Got it. So what we are saying is, you'll have to have a cross check on everything, right? If there is something missing at one juncture, what you are saying is look at all the evidences that are required and put a mandate saying that these are all critical evidences, right? And these have to be there. Now what we spoke also is a consent management, which is an important point with the DPDP coming in India, right?
Yes.
So without consent you cannot do. Now you are
It is
doing a
not
product.
there. That auditor mind should be why it is not there.
Yeah. So you have evaluated a product, and that evaluation report also is one thing that has to be, how did it fit into your business, what is that the outcomes that is there. So these are evidences that you should be looking, is what I understand from what you're saying.
Correct, sir.
What do auditors ignore, and what they do zoom in on instantly? Because there should be something which they say, oh, this is very important, I'm going to go deep dive into it. So
Yes, sir.
what
Yes,
are
sir.
those pointers?
Sir, we can say, even is a normal sense, even the leader, the bosses, or the auditors, their perspective is to get into the untouched, blind spots. That if it is a harder mindset should itself, you need to be see the blind spots like that. Where is the traceability? Can you trace the decision back to the evidence? If any artifact in the chain is missing, the complete audit fails the control. So the each and every control framework is mentioned to the each and every layer, like 130, 146 ways, artifacts. You need to figure out whether it is mapping, is there any tracing is missing, or any mapping is missing. You need to check it for the traceability. And then he has a test and trial for repeatability, because we are humans. Even the GRC tools are, you can say what the commands we can work out. So if you say two and trial, test and trial for the two times, three times of repeatability, same result. If it is come to the evaluations, come to the same point, we can say it is the model is correct and we are doing our good job. And then who is signed this? Who is the accountability mentioned? Who is owned the governance artifact? Because we need to understand human behavioral aspects of the owner based on beyond the organization needs, beyond the organizations. That emotional thing, what audit finding, if it is not there, what is the postulate part to audit finding? So we need to find out who is anonymized or owned governance artifact, who signed this, who accountability it is there. Because basically many auditors find visual, because in the generations we can say visual dashboards, data exports, policy document, no tied with the specific models. We have multiple controls, multiple, because even UI is there, and niche framework is there. Which framework is aligning for the organization? You should have aware that part before going to that. You should not back by logs or records. Any narrative decisions. You should not very limited to any tied up with any specific models. You should have complete overview, complete insights around that.
Got it, sir. So what we are saying is missing artifacts is one thing, and usually include that you don't have change logs for a longer period, or the duration that is set as a audit requirement would be missing. So if I need 90 days, you would have 60 days report.
Yes,
So
sir.
that's one thing. And monitoring baselines would not be set. What is that key parameters that I am supposed to monitor? Some of the parameters would not be considered, thinking that it is not required. So from an audit standpoint, those pointers would be required. So that is the other point. Now data lineage is another point. Then you say signed risk
Mhm.
acceptance. Now if somebody has raised a risk and you have that risk registered, but have you signed off saying that this is the time you will fix it, or this is,
Authenticated. Yes.
yeah. So auditors force on tangible and repeatable, not fancy dashboards, is what we are saying. And audits don't fail on the policy side; they fall at the missing evidences,
Missing evidence,
right?
yes.
So that is what we are saying. Where do you see security and AI governance collide in real world?
Even the data security is, you can say, systems, traditional attack services level in the fundamental way. Because the models are very software, they are also encode data, decisions, and interact with humans in natural language, creating attack vectors, traditional AppSec frameworks. Because security and AI must be co-designed, not retrofitted to each other. Sir. You should be a co-design. There will be no parallel lines. Attack surface should be in the fundamental way, because these are the softwares. Whatever we train, it will embed in the particular purpose.
Got it, sir. What are the top security threats to models today? Like, we have the one I can recall is the prompt injection, right?
Yes, sir.
Data leakage is one thing. Model itself being as a theft side, model theft is one
Yes, sir.
thing. Poisoning is another way of looking at model theft. So are there any other things that you feel are top security threats to these models today?
The biggest threats now we can say is the supply chain attacks, sir. Because the compromised pre-trained model based third-party libraries, because the open source tools we are working many things, even ChatGPT or Cloud, whatever you are using, these are complete open source. That they're from Anthropic, anything we are embedding in our organizations. They're pre-trained models, and the libraries are different for them. That supply chain attacks should be there, because whenever we are filtering that security, data infiltration comes to the picture, you should have a big threat for that supply chain attack. And then adverse like inputs. That's it. Every individual has needs to be carefully crafted and very ethically inputs that cause model disclassification. Because because why the example we can say it's in the computer vision, fraud detection, and medical image use cases. There's a very critical infrastructure, critical product segment. Inputs needs to be very classified, carefully crafted, because there should not be any misclassification around that. In that, these two we can highlight based on that you are poisoning, that these are prompt injection. Now we can infiltrate at that part and model threats. These are common threats we can work out. So, wise.
Sorry. Who controls the mapping between AppSec, data security, and model controls? Because each is different owners. Now, getting them to integrate to serve the common purpose, who owns that?
So we can say there will be explicitly mapped three domains. The ownership is assigned to each and everyone, not assumed like, because application security, they have only input validation only, and then output infiltration and API rate limiting. The authentication, the prompt injection, defenses, everything will come into the picture in the application security. When it comes to data security, he wants the training data access control. Who access what, at what level he can access, what guardrail we can put into, and what is the data handling of the inference, and masking in models, and data retention. Yes, it has that layer, that life cycle in the data security. Now we can say the governance principles for the policies. And a model lead, that artifacts, registry access, and deployment pipeline security. Only that part it should be working in model and MLOps security team. Even for the logging of inference request, after that prompt injections, what is the inference request it should be given. The three need to be each and every stage. They have their own set of boundaries. Each has their own set of rules to perform. Because we
Got
can say the control unified, unified control register we can work out.
Okay. Got it, sir. Sir, one last question that I would like to take because we are on top of the hour.
Yes.
So, who or how should the organizations handle third party and vendor AI where proof is hard to obtain? So, your point.
Uh, Sir, actually, now many people, sir, not only any, we can say small and medium or anything, any organizations, because we for the self-sustainability we need to be dependent on some third parties will embed, and we are working on the SaaS models. Here, any vendor, when an organization deploys any vendor AI model or use SaaS features, account fully for the outcomes. Ultimate. That should be the prime cause. Regardless of you build the model, that's not outsourced risk. It should not outsource risk. It should have complete accountability to the outcome, because the transfer executes while the retaining and the enterprise level. So we need a strict vendor governance, that contractual production and compensation controls, everything needs to be placed in the third party assessment. We have very good framework. Luckily for the NIST, they have very good framework for the each 6 stages in the vendor assessment, so we can beautifully work out that.
Sir, with this, I think we are on top of that. I have taken few pointers that I want to take it as takeaways with this podcast. So, what we are saying is AI governance fails when evidence is missing. So, that's the first point that we want to look at. Model proof must be the fast to produce, not hard to find, is what we are saying. Risk must have an owner because most of the time the risk owner is not mapped properly. That's a missing gap that we see. If nobody owns or signs of governance is only a meeting requirement, so it does not make any sense there. Shadow AI is a process failure, not a people failure. Make the governed path faster than bypassing. So you can make it faster, but you, there's a
Slow.
challenge there, right?
Yeah.
And security is the form of governance that we should look at. Models expand the attack surface and must be controlled like production systems. We need to protect them. Automate proof, keep responsibility with the humans is what we are saying. Keeping all AI is fine, but the responsibility, you cannot say a model is responsible. The person who's implementing the model should be the person who is being made responsible. Evidence collection can scale, judgment cannot. So you cannot judge something because you don't have evidence to scale, right? So that's what I have as a takeaways. Any final pointers that you want to give to the audience and stuff before we close for the day, sir?
Yeah, we can say, sir, that many organizations running behind any just audit trials for their sake of their productivities and client handling, but it is not the case, because project getting a project is different, and safeguarding your organization is much more important, because the data breach, there is some other framework, some other regulatory body will come into the picture after anything happens bad. So we need to be very alignment, very careful for the risk owners who is accountable for the complete projects. You need to be very alertness while onboarding any third party, we can say AI tools into the organization. That not my takeaway for this.
Thank you, Prasad. Thank you for that. And you can reach Prasad on the QR that I'm sharing here. I'll scroll his LinkedIn ID as well onto the this one. You can reach Prasad on this QR. So and you can connect with him. His LinkedIn ID, I'm scrolling it here so that you can talk to him. Prasad, you can connect to him, look at his work, what is he be doing. Prasad, I want to close with a leadership grade summary where I say AI governance is not a document that we are looking at. It's a proof plus ownership plus continuous control is what we are talking. If an organization adopt the mindset shift after listening to this episode, it should be with if you can prove can't prove it, you don't ship it. So that's what we say. If you can't own it, the risk we don't scale. So that is where we say, and with this we would like to conclude our podcast for today. And Thank you for joining to audience, and Prasad, thank you for joining us today. This we would like to conclude our podcast. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Prem Kumar sir, for inviting me for this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.